All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really powerful story to ask a tough question. A question about secrets, sacrifice, and who really gets to own history. So let's just get right to the heart of it. This is the big question for our entire explainer. Does the government have the right to own your personal history for the sake of national security? It's a heavy one for sure. It really pits the needs of the state against the rights of an individual person. To really dig into this question, we're going to look at the incredible, and for a long, long time, top secret case of the Navajo Code Talkers. Their story, well, it's about so much more than just a secret code. It's about what happens when a government takes a culture's most unique asset, its language, and basically classifies it, turning heroes into secrets they were forbidden to tell. Think about the end of World War II. America is celebrating this massive victory, right? You've got parades, heroes' welcomes. We all know those iconic pictures. Ticker tape flying everywhere, sailors kissing nurses in Times Square. It was this huge public celebration. But at the very same time, a crucial group of soldiers was ordered to do the exact opposite. They were forced to literally erase their own contributions from history, to tell absolutely no one what they did, and the penalty if they did? Treason. Now, to really get the weight of this, you have to understand the time period. This secrecy was demanded during an era of intense paranoia. The Red Scare was in full swing, right? So on one hand, you have people like the Rosenbergs, who were executed for giving nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. That was seen as the ultimate betrayal. And then on the other hand, you've got the Code Talkers. They were showing this incredible, unwavering loyalty by keeping America's secrets, even though America had broken so many promises to them and their people. So let's talk about the price of that silence. What did it actually cost? Because this wasn't just some rule they had to follow. It was a burden, a really heavy one, with a devastating human cost that just rippled through families for decades. You see, in Diné, or Navajo culture, there's a vital tradition for warriors returning from combat. It's a cleansing ceremony called Nada, and it's meant to help them process the trauma of war. But here's the catch. To do it, you have to be able to talk about what you went through. Their orders, that wall of silence, it completely blocked this fundamental path to healing. And that causes something psychologists now call moral injury. It's this deep, deep wound to the soul. And this wasn't for a few months or a year. This silence lasted for 23 years. Just think about that. For more than 2 decades, these men couldn't tell their wives why they woke up screaming from nightmares. They couldn't tell their kids what they did during the war. They couldn't even tell their doctors the real source of their trauma. Just complete silence. And this secrecy, it wasn't just psychological. It had these devastating, very real economic consequences. I mean, look at this. Their official service records were stamped classified, and their role was often just listed as basic infantry or, believe it or not, janitor. So what does that mean? It means they couldn't prove their incredible specialized service to get the GI Bill, no college tuition, no home loans, all these highly specialized linguistic skills, totally useless in the civilian job market. They were completely and systematically shut out of the post-war economic boom that basically built the American middle class. And this timeline, wow, it just lays bare the staggering gap between their service and any kind of recognition. The war ends in 1945, and the gag order begins. Now get this. 3 years later, in 1948, these very same men are finally granted the right to vote in their own country. It takes until 1968 for the truth to even be declassified, and not until 2001, 56 years after the war, do they get the Congressional Gold Medal. So you gotta ask, why? Why, after 23 years of total secrecy, was the truth finally allowed to come out? Was it a sudden change of heart from the government? Yeah, the short answer is no. The government didn't suddenly wake up and recognize a moral duty to tell their story. The secret was released for a much colder, much more practical reason. Technology had simply made it obsolete. See, by the late 1960s, things had changed. We had sophisticated new encryption technologies, computers, satellites. A human-based, unwritten code just wasn't as critical for national security anymore. The military simply didn't need to protect the secret with the same intensity. So in 1968, they declassified it. The truth came out not because it was the right thing to do, but because the secret itself was no longer valuable to the state. But for these men, that truth was absolutely priceless. The moment of declassification, it just unleashed decades of pent-up emotion. If you look at video archives from their first reunions, you see these stoic old men just weeping openly. It was the first time they could finally share the single greatest burden and the single greatest accomplishment of their lives with the people they loved. And while that moment of release was priceless, for most of the original guys who actually created the code, official recognition came way, way too late. Of the first 29 Navajo men who pioneered this language as a weapon, fewer than 5 were still alive to receive their medals in 2001. For most of them, justice delayed really was justice denied. And all of this, everything we've talked about, it brings us right back to the central theme of this whole explainer, sovereignty. But we're not just talking about sovereignty over land, we're talking about sovereignty over your own life story. Those decades of silence, it wasn't just about hiding information. It was a fundamental denial of the code talkers' ownership over their own lives, their own experiences, their own stories. And this forces us to think about a deeper definition of sovereignty, the absolute fundamental right to control your own narrative. The state hadn't just classified a military tactic, it had classified their very existence, their trauma, and their place in history. This conflict, this tug of war over who has the right to control information, is incredibly relevant today, right? On one side, you have the code talker's duty, loyalty to the state, keeping a secret for national security at all personal costs. On the other side, you have what you might call the whistleblower's duty, loyalty to the public, revealing a secret for the common good, also at great personal cost. Both of these acts are framed as patriotic, both are incredibly risky, and they both revolve around one central question: who gets to own the truth? Ultimately, the story of the code talkers leaves us with this really difficult and deeply personal question. Their silence was an act of profound patriotism that saved countless lives, no question. But it also inflicted these deep, lasting wounds. It forces us to ask, when is silence the right choice? And who has the right to demand it? Which brings us all the way back to that first question we asked. Does a government, in the name of security, ever truly have the right to own your history?